Now that we've set up the torso, we need to take a look at the arm. So exit the skin modifier by clicking on Edit Envelopes, and then let's go over and select the IK left arm controller, and we'll turn on auto key like we did for the leg. Go to frame 10 and you'll see the legs moved up again, and this time we're going to move this controller down by the side of the leg, and we want to rotate the shoulder controller as well. And we can't see it in here, so either what you can do is set your view to wireframe by right clicking on the top left and then clicking wireframe, or you can use the select by name button here. That'll pop up a list of all the things we've got which we can use. So I want CTL left clavicle, which is here, but I've still got select children on, so I'll turn that off. So CTL left clavicle is the one we want, and in rotate mode we actually want to change this mode to local space so that it'll rotate around the object's main axes. So we're just going to rotate this down slightly, and as you can see it's made a keyframe there. Now if we go along to frame 20, we can rotate it up again, and we're also going to select the IK left arm controller and move that up and outwards so that it's pointing away from the body. And between these two controllers we should get a pretty good range of motion to test the skinning that we're going to apply to the arm. So once you're happy with the poses of the arm, just click auto key again to turn it off. Right click in the top left, go back to smooth and highlights shading, and slide the time slider and see how that's deforming. It's pretty nasty things happening around the shoulder and elbow there, but we'll fix that now. So now we want to reselect Zombie 01 and go back into envelope editing mode, and a quick way of doing this is actually just to press the number 1 key on your keyboard, and you should find that that activates the edit envelopes mode, and if you press it again it'll turn it off. So that's number 1 is the shortcut to go straight into edit envelopes mode. Should save you a bit of time. And now if we highlight the left arm bone, which we'll find up here, and start by just selecting this edge loop just above the middle of the bicep, and click grow 3 times to expand that selection. Weight that fully to left arm. And now if we just select this loop closest to the elbow and switch over to left arm roll, and we can actually weight this one fully to left arm roll. And if we now as well select all of these edge loops, the 3 edge loops above, I don't want that vertex there, just the 3 edge loops above. And if you click the plus next to set weight, it'll actually add a weight of 0.05 onto your current selection. So you'll see that get added there as a faint blue color. But now what that means is when we click blend, it will use those weights to blend between the fully weighted part at the end and the least weighted part at the top. So if we click blend about 10 times there, you should see a nice smooth fall off from red to kind of grey, and that means we should have a pretty good soft blend between the left arm bone and the left arm roll bone. So now we can move on to skinning the forearm bone. So if you just highlight left forearm from the bone list, then we're going to just select all of these vertex loops between the elbow and the wrist. And so you could either do this using a drag selection, or you could just, like I'm doing, make edge loop selections out of all of those and then just weight them fully to left forearm bone. And once we've done that, you can highlight left forearm roll, select these 2 vertex loops around the wrist and weight them fully to left forearm roll. And then the next loop up, we just want to start blending with the main forearm bone so that it'll have a nice twist deformation, and we'll just weight that 0.9. The next loop up we'll weight 0.75. Next loop up is 0.5, and you can see where this is going. Next loop is 0.25, and the final one is 0.1. So then we'll have a nice smooth gradient between the wrist and the elbow for the forearm twist. And if you haven't already, it might be a good idea to just save the scene, file save, or I just use the shortcut key Ctrl and S, just to make sure we don't lose any work so far. It's a good idea to just get used to pressing Ctrl S fairly frequently, because you never know when something might go horribly wrong. Anyway, now we need to blend the forearm with the upper arm so we get a nice deformation at the elbow. So if we just highlight the left arm roll bone again, and then select the first loop below the ones we've already weighted, this one here, and weight that 0.9 to this bone, and then if we go for the next one down, loop selection there, and 0.5 weight. The next one down is another loop selection of weight of 0.25, and the final loop here should be a weight of 0.1. And something else that you may not have tried but is useful to know is you can actually, without leaving the skin modifier, drag the time slider and just see how that's all deforming as the arm moves around. So you can actually see there that there is pretty good deformation. You're not getting any strange artifacts or vertices flying off, and you can just drag that backwards and forwards and just see if at any point in time it doesn't look quite right. So if we wanted to tweak any weights in this pose, we could do that and see the results. So for example, I could try out a weight of 0.75, and that's collapsing a bit too much around the elbow there, so I'll just put it back to the 0.9 we assigned originally. But it's very useful to just move between poses and then change weights in a non-standard pose and just see how that is affecting the mesh. And you can often really get some very good blends in this way. So we'll go back to frame 0 now. Now we need to start skinning the shoulder, and this is quite a complex step. We'll be doing quite a lot of stuff here, but hopefully you can follow along and we'll end up with a nicely deforming shoulder area. This is one of the toughest areas, so it may take some time. But we'll start out by just highlighting the left shoulder bone so we can start weighting verts to it. And we'll select this edge loop just past the shoulder and weight that 0.1 towards the shoulder bone. And I'm going to use this technique and just drag the time slider, because as you can see the shoulder is not deforming very well, and we'll probably want to check that as we're going along. So the next loop I'll select is one in. That's not a full loop, so I'll grab the verts underneath as well and weight that 0.25 to the shoulder. So you can see it started blending a bit more, but the vertices above are still weighted fully to the arm, so it looks a bit strange. And you'll notice if I get a loop selection of this, I actually end up with a selection running all the way down the back and across the front, which I don't want, so I can just Alt and drag to deselect, and I'll just grab these verts around the shoulder, and you can hit zoom extents, which is a hotkey on Z, to just make sure that you've got exactly the vertices you want selected. And we'll weight those 0.5 to the shoulder. Now this set of vertices up here, I'm going to select all of these by hand, and then we're going to weight them 0.75 so that the shoulder has a lot of influence over them. Just click that there. And now we've got these vertices under the influence of the shoulder, but you can see there it's collapsing quite a lot when he raises his arm, so we're going to need to blend this even further inward. So I'm going to select this whole loop and just weight this 0.5, and that will help with our underarm area as well. And then with these vertices around here, going to weight these 0.25 towards the shoulder, just so that the neck area is slightly influenced when the shoulder raises and lowers. As you can see, these vertices are stretching quite a lot. This edge along here is getting extended when we rotate the shoulder downwards, so we're probably going to need to take some influence away from the arm here, since it is currently weighted to the arm. And we actually want to anchor this to the spine so that it's more related to the torso. So if you select the spine 2 joint, that's the highest spine joint, and weight the selection just 0.25 towards the spine, that's already helped a little bit. We might actually want to increase this a bit, so we can use this plus button, and we probably want to do the same with these vertices here. 0.25 we'll start off with. See how that's going. There, that's looking a lot better. Although it seems like at the moment, as the arm is raising, the clavicle isn't actually raising high enough. So we're just going to leave the skin modifier for a second. Select the control left clavicle. Turn on auto key, so we're making a keyframe. And in rotate mode, again, set the pivot to local so that we get the actual axes of the object. Just rotate it upwards even further, and that's going to give us a better, more realistic representation of how the arm would actually raise in a human. And you can see as well the skin weights will need adjusting. So let's go back into edit envelopes mode. These are probably too far weighted to the spine, so let's just reduce that to 0.1. I think we can safely reduce these as well. So as you can see, skinning can be a bit of a trial and error issue, but you really do have to look at all the possible ranges of motion that the arm could go through and make sure that you've dealt with all of them. So now this is looking a bit better. We need to do a bit more with the left shoulder. There's still a bit of stretching around the front area. So we're just going to select all of these vertices around here. And we're going to weight those 0.25 towards the shoulder as well. These vertices under the arm are getting lifted up too much, so we're going to weight these slightly towards spine 2. 0.25 should do it. That evens out the stretch a bit, and now you'll see as the arm goes up and down, the whole area moves with a more realistic fashion, makes it look like the muscles are stretching. These vertices here are probably still weighted too much to the arm. Let's just drop that down to 0.25. Maybe add 0.1 here, just to blend that in a bit further. And all the time I'm just dragging this time slider, seeing how the motion of the arm is affecting the distortion of the shoulder area. And you can do things like just subtract some weights here and there and see how that's affecting the shape, or add a few weights here and there. And the more you do this, the faster you'll get at it, and the more understanding you'll get of how it's actually all being applied and being controlled by the bones. So we'll just weight a few more verts around the side to the arm, and the underside is probably still weighted a little too much to the arm, so we'll drop these down to 0.25 from the left arm bone. Just let them get controlled a bit more by the spine and the shoulder joint. Remember to check the front and the back to make sure it's deforming well. Might want to reduce this a bit. Again, this minus and plus buttons can be quite useful. You can just add or subtract a weight here and there. In fact, I'm going to remove that from the left arm completely. And as you can see from the colours, it's usually a good indication of how the vertex weights are being shared. If the gradient is smooth from red to blue, then you know it's probably going to be a nice smooth transition. Here you can see that there's a bit of a kink in the deformation. It's because this vertex isn't weighted to the spine at all, while the vertices surrounding it are. So we'll just knock that to 0.25 on the spine, and that evens things out nicely. Probably want to weight this one a bit more to the spine as well. And just keep going around and trying it out until it looks really smooth and really natural. I think that's looking quite good now. So his arm can deform all the way down and all the way up, and the shoulder looks like it's moving appropriately. So we should be able to go back to frame 0, and we can move on to skinning the hand. The hand can be another complex part of the skinning process, but we'll start by just blending the wrist with the arm. So we'll highlight the left hand bone, and then we're going to just select this loop around here and weight that 0.5 to left hand, and the loop above it should be weighted 0.1, and that should just give us a nice blend between the hand and the arm. We'll also need to skin all of these vertices around the palm and the back of the hand, which we can select with loop selection as usual, and we're going to weight those 1 to the left hand bone. We're also going to select this loop up near the knuckles, and once you've got that selected, just grow the selection once and hit 1 again. We should probably also include the verts around the base of the thumb. We'll be blending those with the thumb bones later. The vertices at the front of the knuckles will also need to be weighted to the left hand so that we can blend those with the fingers. So now that the hand has been fully weighted, we can move on to the left thumb bone. And the default skin weighting has already got a fairly good idea of where the weights should go, but it's not perfect. So we're going to select these two which it's weighted and just remove them from the left thumb 3, which I highlighted by clicking on this joint here. And these two vertices here are intended to be linked more with the left thumb 2 bone. So if we highlight that and then weight them 0.5, that should provide us with a nice blend. We're also going to select these vertices on the bottom of the thumb between the second and third joint and weight those fully to left thumb 2. They shouldn't change position as the thumb bends. And the same thing is going to apply to these 3 vertices here. If we just weight these to the left thumb 1 joint, it controls those fully, and it should control these 2 on top by about a half. So we should get some nice smooth blending between those finger joints. Just to test this, we're going to leave edit envelopes mode and go into wireframe view just so we can see these bones. And once we've removed the keyframes from the shoulder and the arm, because they're going to get in the way of this test, we can just click and drag to select the keyframes. They'll turn white when they're selected, and you can just hit the delete button and those keyframes will go, and you'll notice the arm now no longer moves. So since we're skinning the hand now, I'm going to go into rotate mode, and I'm going to turn on auto key as before, go to frame 10 and just start rotating some of these thumb joints. So the thumb joint 1, thumb joint 2, and finally thumb joint 3. And if we turn smooth and highlights back on, you should see that the thumb is deforming fairly well. We can also, while we're in auto key mode, edit these fingers, since we're going to be weighting those in a minute and we might as well have a good test animation. So if you select each of the joints in turn and just rotate that, you'll notice they are currently deforming rather badly, but now that we've got this test animation in place, it should be fairly easy to tell when they've been skinned correctly. So I'll just rotate these down as well. Since this is going into a game, it's got to be fairly optimized, so we only have one set of finger joints which are actually controlling all 3 of the remaining fingers. Since in general the character will be fairly small on screen, you'll be seeing them at long range and they'll be moving, so you won't actually notice that there aren't individually controlled fingers on the hand. Most of these poses in first-person shooter games tend to involve hands holding guns, so that having 3 fingers all in the same pose is fairly natural when they're gripping a trigger or a handle. And now that we've got this test animation in place, the hand opening and closing, we can turn off auto key, turn smooth and highlights back on, and select the Zombie 01 mesh again, go into edit envelopes, continue just tweaking these skin weights. So if I rotate the thumb down as I move to frame 10, you'll see that these vertices around the base of the thumb aren't moving at all, and we want to weight these a bit towards thumb 1. In fact, the first loop of vertices we want to weight fully to thumb 1, and these verts underneath the inside of the hand should be 0.5. They're the kind of fleshy part in between the hand and the thumb, and as we move up the base of the thumb towards the hand, we want to weight these 0.5 as well, just to give it a kind of smooth gradient between no weight to full weight. And now as the thumb moves, the whole hand kind of flexes a little bit, and you get a bit more natural movement there. So moving on to the index finger, we'll start at the end again. You'll notice there are some very strange weights here. We can just select these vertices and click 0 to remove the influence. And you can select these 2 here, weight them 1 to the end finger joint, and as before, these joints on the underside will actually be weighted fully to the left index 2 joint. So if you highlight that from the list here, click 1, and then preview that animation, you'll see that the finger retains its volume around the end there while it's rotating, because the geometry has been set up in such a way that the single control edge on the inside of the finger remains in position as the joints rotate. We're going to weight these on top, 0.5 towards this joint. Again, preview that, and that's a bit more smooth, a bit more natural looking. And as before with the underlying vertices, we're going to weight them to the previous bone fully, and the verts on top will be half. And if you notice here, there are actually a few vertices which have been assigned to the wrong finger by the skin's default bind. We can just select those and 0 them, and you'll notice that when I clicked 0 there, nothing happened. They're currently weighted fully to the left index finger, So zeroing them would result in no weight at all, which is not a valid weight to have on a joint. So we'd have to actually bind those to a different joint rather than just zeroing the weights. So if I highlight left ring 1, which would the joint they should be assigned to, then we just click 1. We might even assign that whole loop just to make sure it matches up. If we go back to left index, that's looking a bit more natural, and this one here should be weighted fully to left index 1, and we can actually blend the top of the finger with the knuckle so that we don't have this rigid look here as the finger bends down. We can weight that 0.5, and the vertices beyond it should be 0.25. So now the whole knuckle moves when the finger rotates. And the final piece for this finger is just giving the underside a little bit of motion from the finger as it pulls in. So we'll weight these 0.25 as well. Now the whole end of the hand will slightly change position as the finger joint rotates. Now we're nearly finished, we just have to sort out these last 3 joints. It's treated in exactly the same way as the index finger. Just highlight left ring 3, remove the weights from the verts that are too far up, zero those out. Make sure that all the weights that should be assigned are assigned. These 2 on the top here should be fully weighted. This one on the bottom should not. And once we've made sure of these, we can just move on to the next left ring 2, highlight that from the list, and we can share the weights on the top here, 0.5. Make sure these are all weighted correctly. And again, just preview how that's deforming. You can see some vertices flying off at crazy angles. Move up to left ring 1 and assign that weight properly. It was again assigned to the wrong finger. We'll just select all of these vertices and assign them all to left ring 1 and prevent all of this collapsing. And these on the top of the joints as well. And these should probably be blended with left ring 2. And just notice that every time I switch between the joints, it highlights which vertices have influences, so it's easy to see which ones we need to remove. And just zero those out as well. And blend this one with left ring 1. Again, 0.5 weight. 0.5 weight here. The little finger is always going to be a bit awkward, since we are only controlling it from a single joint. It doesn't actually move in the way that a real finger would, but we can get around this with some smart skin weighting. We'll just weight this fully to the left hand so that it won't collapse as we move the finger in. Probably want to share that weight a little bit. Might even want to weight the insides of the fingers all to the top ring joint as well. And the knuckles in the same way as we did for the first finger. Just weight the first vertex 0.5 and then the vertices behind them should be 0.25. That means the whole knuckle gets a nice range of movement as the hand deforms. These vertices should probably be assigned to left ring 2. In fact, it looks like they're going to need to be blended between left ring 1 and left ring 2. And again, you just have to experiment until the result matches what you want from that certain pose. And try out all these different combinations of weights until you end up with something that looks most acceptable. Again, the finger isn't really something we'll be seeing a lot of in the game, so we can actually probably just call it a day there. The majority of the hand looks good when it's deforming. Just turn that view off and turn off edged faces now, so we can see what the actual smooth mesh looks like. And you can see that there. The fingers actually look like they're deforming pretty well. You can make a good fist, which was always vital for a game. And now that we've finished skinning this hand, we've got all of the weights for the hand, the arm, the shoulder and the leg, which means we're ready to mirror them across to the right hand side of the body. So, since this model is pretty much symmetrical, we can actually save some time and just mirror the skin weights over from the joints we've already rigged and put them on the other side. So let's turn edged faces back on, select the zombie 01 and go back to frame 0 just so that it's in a symmetrical pose. And if we click edit envelopes, and we can actually roll up the parameters rollout now, and you should see the mirror parameters roll out. If it's closed, you can just click on the header to roll it out, and then click mirror mode to turn it on. And you'll notice that all the vertices have gone red. This is because it doesn't find any symmetry, because you'll notice that the symmetry plane by default is across the x-axis. So we'll just change mirror plane to y, and you'll notice that half of the vertices go green and the other half go blue. So obviously 3ds Max knows which side of the model is which. It's made a kind of calculation and worked out which are the symmetrical vertices, but you'll notice that these joint markers have all turned red, so it can't actually find a match for those yet. But that's what this mirror thresh spinner is for. You'll notice if I click and hold on this and drag it up, once I reach a certain point, then all of these joint markers change colour and become the same colour as the vertices they surround. So safe value is 1.3. We'll leave it there. Doesn't matter about the centre joints because they've already been set up. We're just worried about the legs, arms and hands. So now the update is very simple to do. There's this icon here. If you hover your mouse over it, it says paste blue to green verts. And that means it'll copy all of the skin weights from the blue vertices and the blue bones over to the green vertices and green bones. It'll just do that by best match based on location on this mirror thresh which we just changed. So if I just click that button, it'll highlight the verts that it's copied, and we can turn off mirror mode. And if we just want to test that that's all worked out okay, we can exit skin modifier, select one of the controllers, for example IK right arm, try moving it around. You'll notice that that arm is deforming perfectly, just like we set up for the other arm. And if we moved all of the fingers, we'd see the same there. I could just try rotating some joints. The hand is fine. I don't have auto key on, so I'll just undo that to make sure it's staying in the default pose. Try moving the control right foot this time as well. Just move it up and down in that plane. And again, that's all deforming fine, so it looks like the skin weights have copied perfectly. That means all we have left to skin is the head.